We're living in a world that's basically run by algorithms. They're in the background of everything, recommending movies, trading stocks, even driving our cars. But what happens when one of these super complex systems makes a really, really bad mistake? It brings up one of the biggest questions of our time. Who's actually responsible?
Just let that sink in for a moment. When the code messes up, when the bot goes completely off the rails, who's left to pick up the pieces? Who pays the price? Because as we're about to find out, that price can be higher than you could ever imagine. $243 million. Now, that is not some hypothetical number I just pulled out of thin air. No, that is the actual price tag a Florida jury put on a single AI's mistake. And it's part of a landmark case that is shaking up the entire world of artificial intelligence. Now, what's so fascinating about this verdict is this quote right here. For years, the go-to defense was, well, hey, a human was supposed to be watching it. This verdict, it's basically the court saying that excuse just isn't going to fly anymore. If you build the system, you can't just pass the buck when it fails.
Okay, so let's dive into this first case because it really just perfectly captures the life and death stakes we're talking about when these autonomous systems get it wrong on the road.
So here's what's so critical about what the jury decided. It was a wrongful death case, right? And they found that the autopilot software didn't properly warn the driver before a crash. The key finding was that the software itself was defective. Wow. This was a huge moment. It was a massive shot across the bow to the whole industry, saying, hey, how you market your AI, it really, really matters. Overpromise, and it could cost you hundreds of millions.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit because the risk we're talking about, it isn't just about physical danger. It's also about a much more hidden threat, one that affects millions of people's ability to even get a job. I'm talking about AI gatekeepers in hiring.
Think about it. Almost every major company you can name now uses AI to sift through mountains of job applications. It's super efficient, sure, but it has created this massive legal minefield. I mean, what happens when those bots are quietly filtering people out because of their age or using some hidden data to make biased judgments?
And this slide? This is brilliant. It shows the new legal strategy being used against these AI vendors. It's called a pincer movement. See, on one side, you have cases like Mobley versus Workday. They're attacking the outcome, saying the AI is discriminating based on age, and the AI vendor is basically an agent of the company doing the hiring. Then, on the other side, you have Kistler versus Eightfold AI. This one attacks the process. It argues the AI vendor is acting like a credit reporting agency, making these secret decisions about you without any of the required transparency. So one case hits them for being biased, the other for being secretive. It's a two-front war.
So why are these cases so incredibly complicated? Well, it all comes down to this central challenge, this massive hurdle that plagues all of AI law. It's something that both engineers and lawyers call the black box problem.
So what is the black box problem? Simply put, with the most complex AI systems, you can see the data that goes in, and you can see the decision that comes out. But the process in the middle, the why, is often a complete and total mystery, sometimes even to the very people who designed it. So you can see the issue, right? How are you supposed to prove a system was negligent if literally no one can explain how it made its decision?
Okay, so when you break it all down, AI can cause harm in three main ways. First, you've got misuse. That's easy. Someone uses AI for bad stuff. Then there are capability failures. That's like any other product defect, it just breaks. But the third one, alignment failures, that's the real legal headache. This is where the AI technically does what you told it to do, but it does it in some destructive, bizarre way that nobody ever saw coming. And that's where our old legal rules about what's foreseeable just completely fall apart.
This whole black box challenge is forcing legal systems all over the world to adapt. I mean, they're finally realizing that the old rulebook just wasn't designed for machines that can learn and make decisions all by themselves. So you guessed it, they're rewriting the rules.
And what's really interesting is that we're seeing two very different paths emerge. Over in the European Union, they're going for this big, centralized, top-down approach with their AI Act. Their core idea is pretty simple. The person or company that creates the risk should have to prove it's safe. Meanwhile, in the US, it's more of a legal patchwork. It's a mix of different state laws, and we're trying to adapt old liability laws. The big difference? Here, the burden of proof is still on the victim to prove the AI developer was at fault.
Now, this is the EU's real game changer. It's a legal tool called a rebuttable presumption. Because of that black box problem, right, it's nearly impossible for a victim to prove what went wrong inside the code. So the EU is just flipping the script. A court can now presume the AI was defective, and the legal burden shifts to the developer to prove that it wasn't. This is a massive, massive deal for holding these companies accountable.
Okay, so this brings us to our final section, and it really ties everything we've talked about together. It's what I'm calling the end of impunity. All of these trends, the giant verdicts, the new kinds of lawsuits, the changing laws, they all point in one clear direction. The era of AI just existing in some kind of legal gray area, well, it's closing, and it's closing fast.
For a long time, AI felt like the Wild West, right? A lawless frontier. Companies could release these incredibly powerful systems, and if something went wrong, they could just sort of hide behind the complexity of the code. But that frontier is closing. From courtrooms in Florida to regulators in Brussels, the message is becoming undeniable. The algorithm did it is no longer a defense. So what's the big takeaway here? The new reality is that AI risk is now just plain old business risk. Courts are getting creative, finding ways to make old laws fit this new tech. Regulators are cracking down hard on anyone who oversells what their AI can do. And as we saw with that $243 million verdict, the consequences are very, very real. The world is deciding the answer to this very question right now. The real question is, who do you think should be responsible?